I don't know if you're aware of this, but Souls games go hard. Literally. They're infamously tough as nails, and to an inexperienced player, finishing one can seem like an insurmountable task. So whenever a new one comes out, the topic of conversation inevitably turns to that of difficulty, and whether an easy mode option is merited. I'm of two minds about this debate. Back in 2015, when Bloodborne first came out, I was very excited to try it out. I had seen all the trailers and gameplay demos and had absolutely fallen in love with the grim, Victorian aesthetic. Everything from the enemies and environments to the characters' weapons and outfits appealed to me on a visceral level that I just hadn't felt since the Dead Space series. Pun very much intended. But there was one nagging worry in the back of my mind. This was a Souls-like game, developed by From Software. As someone who genuinely sucked at games and usually played on the easiest difficulty setting, this fact alone was beyond intimidating. I'd heard all the horror stories about this series. The impossible boss fights, steep learning curve, harsh punishments for failure, and reflex-intensive combat that had become inseparably linked to FromSoft as a studio. And the idea of throwing myself into that meat grinder was terrifying to me. But man, it looked so cool! I just had to try it. So I waited for it to drop in price a little bit and picked it up on the cheap so that if I ended up hating it, I wouldn't have wasted too much money. And that's exactly what happened. I was completely overwhelmed by everything the game threw at me in the opening hours. Central Yharnam absolutely demolished me over and over again. Just making it to the Cleric Beast felt like a Herculean feat of epic proportions, let alone actually beating it. At the time, I didn't even know it was possible to level up at the Hunter's Dream, and had to resort to cheesy strategies like farming Molotovs and trying to hit him from a distance. Of course, this wasn't an optimal playstyle, and it led to me banging my head against that particular wall for at least 20 attempts before I finally felled the beast out of sheer luck. Only to find out that it was optional the whole time, and the real path of progression was in a different direction entirely. Frustrated but still determined, I pushed through the sewers and eventually found myself going toe-to-toe with the notorious Father Gascoigne. Needless to say, my Molotov strat was next to useless here, especially paired with my poor grasp of the controls and lack of coordination in general. So I looked up a guide to beating him and realized that I needed to learn to parry. This would yield initially exciting results, and I could get him to phase 2 about half the time now, but my timing was inconsistent, and even when I was on point, his transformation always curb-stomped me no matter what I did. I'm not sure how many times I attempted that fight, but it felt like hundreds. Eventually, I could not subsist on willpower alone, and I just wasn't having fun anymore. So I quit. I gave up entirely. If you had asked me at that time whether I thought the game should have an easy mode, I would have said yes, 100%. There was so much I liked about Bloodborne, but due to my lack of skill, I couldn't enjoy or even play the game that I had spent my own hard-earned money on. I couldn't access the vast majority of the content that I had been so excited to see. That didn't sit right with me. It was so frustrating, it felt like an injustice. If I'd been given the option to turn down enemy damage and beef up my own with the flip of a menu toggle, I'd have done that in a heartbeat.
You're a pussy.
I didn't care if that made me a little bitch, I just wanted to play my damn video game. When you buy a ticket to Disney World, they don't make you pass a math quiz before they let you on Space Mountain. They just give you the experience you paid to have. That was my mindset at the time anyway. But after cooling myself off for a few months and giving myself time to forget about the whole stupid thing, Dark Souls 3 came out. And it looked so cool! The lore, the monsters, the environments, the build crafting, it all appealed to my little RPG-loving heart so much. I knew it was made by the same developers as Bloodborne. I knew Dark Souls had a reputation for insane difficulty, but I bought it anyway. Fuck! They got me again! Why do I do this to myself? I had no idea what I was thinking. All I knew was that this time, no matter what, I was going to finish the game. I'd push through anything, I'd slam my head against that wall until it broke down, or I did. And so, I started my journey. The tutorial boss, Iudex Gundyr, took me a fair few tries, but I eventually got him, same for the next several. I don't think the game was actually any easier, I was just more okay with trying over and over again this time around, and because of that I was able to very slowly make my way through Dark Souls 3. That is until I met the Abyss Watchers. These guys nearly broke me. They were impossible for me and I was on the edge of quitting yet again when I remembered a mechanic I had been ignoring thus far. That mechanic was summoning. I've never been a huge multiplayer guy, single player stuff has always been more my speed, and playing with random people I didn't know was a particularly intimidating concept for me. And since none of my friends at the time had the game, I had never tried to summon. But my desperation was at a boiling point, and I was left with no other option. So I embered up, summoned a couple of friendly players, and pushed through that fog wall once again. We utterly clobbered those doofuses almost immediately. What had once been the hardest gaming challenge of my life had been reduced to a 30-second bonk fest, and the Abyss Watchers were no more. For the rest of my playthrough, I was much more confident knowing that summoning was always in my back pocket. Anytime something was too hard, I could just call in some guy to basically do it for me. It was definitely a crutch, but knowing that backup was always just a call away allowed me to practice and learn in a way that felt much safer and less scary. Eventually, with this extra help, I was able to put enough time into the game and gain enough experience and familiarity with it that I could start to handle harder challenges on my own. I started leaning on my crutch less and learning how to engage with the mechanics on the level the game demanded from me. I was genuinely having a ton of fun, slowly but surely developing a sense of progress and mastery over a world that I had once thought was unconquerable. After a steep learning curve, I finally beat the Soul of Cinder and finished a Souls game once and for all. My newfound enthusiasm guided me back to Bloodborne, where I applied everything I had learned through my Dark Souls training arc to blast through Father Gascoigne and truly fall in love with this series that was so hostile at the start. I think that awful learning curve is actually a big part of why people love these games so much. Your own personal experience with learning and overcoming such a challenge provides people with a sense of ownership and intimate connection to the game that you just don't get with most games. Having to try levels and bosses over and over again and learn all their tricks and patterns and secrets sears those things into your memory like no other. I could probably navigate every twist and turn of Central Yharnam or the Undead Burg blindfolded at this point. Every detail, item placement, and enemy ambush will forever be part of me. The immense feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction that comes from beginning your journey as a frail, clueless, powerless loser and carving out your own place as a legend in that world through your own will, patience, and practice of the complex systems designed to take you there would just be impossible to replicate if getting to that endpoint was easy. The story, characters, monsters, music, level, and art design are all awesome on their own, and I have no doubt that an easy mode would allow more people to experience and appreciate those things. Souls with an easy mode would absolutely still be a good, fun video game, and I don't think adding it to any future entries would ruin anything for the people who already love it. But for some people, first-time players like me, who definitely would have caved and taken the easy option at the first sign of hardship if it was available, it would lead to a severely compromised experience. If I had been given an easy mode when I first tried Bloodborne, I probably still would have liked the game, and I probably would have gone on to check out the rest of the series from there. But there is no way that it or the Souls genre as a whole would hold nearly as special a place in my heart. If that world had bent to my will and showed me all its secrets with no struggle on my part, I very much doubt it would have become one of my favorite gaming experiences of all time in the way that it is now. My personal connection to the game is inextricably linked to all of the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to forge that bond, and I wouldn't have had that if I had been given the option to take it easy. I obviously cannot speak for everyone, and I have no doubt that someone out there could love an easy version of these games just as much as I love the hard versions. So if From Software decides to add an easy mode to Elden Ring 2 or whatever the next Souls-like is going to be, I won't be upset about it because I already know that for me, the challenge is the secret sauce that makes these games special, and I would just stick to the hard mode. But I would be kinda sad for all the new players who wouldn't even know that they're robbing themselves of having the incredible experience that I got to have, all because of a menu toggle to bypass the hardship in favor of instant gratification. But alas, regardless of what I want, I don't think From will be implementing an easy mode anytime soon. But luckily for those people who feel that the games are too hard for them, as I once did, however, a solution already exists for making the game easier on you until you're ready to take on the challenge alone. One that still gives you every opportunity to learn and never locks you out of trying to do it the hard way when you feel like you're ready. Of course, I'm talking about summoning, the same method I used to train myself up. And in Elden Ring, you don't even need an internet connection. You can collect a menagerie of AI-controlled spirits to help you out in a pinch. You can also look up powerful builds and boss guides, you can grind to overlevel your character, and you can figure out cheesy strats. There's so many ways to make the game easier. But the crucial difference between those methods and an easy mode is those methods still require you to engage with the systems and mechanics of the game and learn how to best use those systems to your advantage and build a playstyle of your own that implements the various tools at your disposal. In this way, players that struggle in the beginning can still get the necessary involvement in the game world needed to build up their understanding of how it all works, how to be good at the game, and develop the skills and confidence in themselves required to eventually master it without that aid, should they choose to do so. Whereas most people who play on an easy difficulty setting simply breeze through the game, finish their playthrough, and move on to the next game without ever needing to learn or improve, and without giving themselves the opportunity to apply whatever they may have learned to a higher difficulty setting later on. Anyway, that's just one man's opinion on a debate that is ultimately pretty silly, because at the end of the day, it's only a video game, and we're all just here to have a bit of fun. And no matter how you choose to enjoy your games, that's the most important thing. So whether you're on Team Easy Mode or Team Get Good, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time on Bigandstuff.